Hey, Hrvoje, it's so nice to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Yo, yeah, I'm Hrvoje. Nice to be here.
What do you think really is the most competitive TCG out there at the moment?
Ooh, I want to say, oddly enough, actually, it's probably just Flesh and Blood. That's the one I think about the most when I think like hyper competitive. That's how the game was designed. So there's a few close contenders, but Flesh and Blood still edges them out.
Interesting. So we will talk about exactly that, like the competitive side of TCGs today. But before we jump into that, let's welcome all the viewers to this podcast episode. Actually, it's the ninth episode here at the Fabled Academy Podcast. And for a little bit more context, I also want to tell the viewers like how we both met because it was like not that long ago in Prague, actually, at the Calling, where the Hunted was introduced. And it was kind of interesting because before the Calling, also, I thought about trying out One Piece actually. And I just bought my first box of OP09 because we have a local group here where Flesh and Blood Locals is actually at the same time where One Piece is played. And it's kind of funny that then we met because you are like one of the best players out there competing in One Piece, right?
Yeah, I played One Piece since pretty much since it came out in OPIA 1, but I couldn't really get into any tournaments until the second format, OPIA 2, because in One Piece there's like tickets for events sell out really quickly. So if it's not something you expect and you try to get events, you miss out on them. So I didn't actually get to start competing immediately. But once I did, the results were pretty good. And starting from those early formats, I already had like some good placements, like top 8s, top 16s. And then in set 3, I won an event like fully undefeated, start to finish with Red Zoro, which is kind of, if I had to compare it to a Flesh and Blood deck, it would be similar to FAB because I also really liked playing FAB before I moved on to mainly One Piece. And since then, I had like a bunch of other top 8s. I got second at the European Championship in Utrecht in January of the last year, which qualified me to Worlds in Japan, where I also got second place, losing out only to the Malaysian representative Guanrong. And since then, I also had several solid placements, top 8s, top 16s, top 32s, and another like a regional win. And the regionals in One Piece, they're like the calling equivalent, I suppose, in terms of pricing and the event size, like 1,000 plus players usually.
Wow, yeah, I heard already that One Piece events are super fast sold out, and also there are so many attendants. What would you say from your side? Like, what made the experience in One Piece so amazing for you? Is it like the community, the play style? Is it a mix of everything?
There's like it's a mix of all those things. So one of the nicest things about TCG is obviously the community, the people you get to meet, and as you travel across pretty much the entire world to play the game. And the community is really nice, but also the game itself is quite good. It's very it has that math aspect that Flesh and Blood also has. So it just kind of appealed to me naturally because there's a lot of room to outplay your opponent, find better angles, and just appropriate like use your resources correctly. Because unlike other mana systems, it has like this sort of unique thing where you can, instead of tapping just mana to play something, you can also attach mana to units to give them power for the turn, for one battle. And managing that stuff correctly gives a lot of like mathematical elements of the game, and it just makes it really good. So even though I was naturally like a fan of the One Piece franchise because I've read the manga since quite some years ago, the game itself was also very intricate and appealed to me in a similar sense that Flesh and Blood did. So I just continued playing.
And you also take the time to, like you said, not only play One Piece, but play multiple TCGs. And we will come to that also in this podcast episode because you actually play TCGs for a living. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's me and also at least one other Croatian player who does it full time, Christian Churla. You might know him from recent good results in Flesh and Blood as well. And yeah, it's like it makes a living, like a very, very nice living, but it's also not a real job. It's just something we enjoy doing. So it's just, in a sense, a dream come true, something that I could not imagine existing like at this scale, like available to, let's say, minor regions like Eastern Europe, like 15 years ago. But since then, we obviously had like a boom in like esports and then COVID, which like made card games more popular. And then just a combination of like actually good prizes in these events make this like a viable career path. That's that's pretty funny to think about, but also really interesting.
So I want to know a little bit more about you then. Like, how did TCGs enter your life? Like, when did the passion for TCGs came up for you? And how did it progress to the way that you see TCGs now being like a cornerstone of your life, making a living out of it?
So they were always like a hobby of mine ever since I was a child. I'm 27 years old now, but ever since I was like 5 or 6 years old, I naturally watched the classics, the Pokemon, the Yu-Gi-Oh, the Dragon Ball, whatnot. So I naturally played Yu-Gi-Oh like every other kid at the time. And then sometime in high school, a friend like brought Yu-Gi-Oh cards to a field trip, and then we started playing a bit more. I remember there are like locals in the city, which have been running for like those 20, I don't know, for since longer than I was born, for different games. So I started going there, and there I met a lot of great people because Croatian Yu-Gi-Oh community is like really nice. I know the international Yu-Gi-Oh community has like a really bad reputation because there's a lot of not so nice characters in there, but I don't know, Croatian people, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh, are just so nice. And I made some, I believe, life-lasting friendships there. And also the game was just at the stage where it really appealed to me. So I continued playing it, but then I kind of started experimenting. Like, not every format in Yu-Gi-Oh was as fun to play. Not every piece of card design felt well thought out. And I figured might as well, learn what else is out there. And that started when Legends of Frontera came out for me, where I just started playing that game. And I didn't actually play it long enough to start playing competitive because Flesh and Blood started getting really hyped up. It was like Crucible days, so I picked that up instead. And all the while playing this hobby, I live in Croatia, Eastern Europe, like not the richest country. The one of the ways to like supplement the hobby, and it's like a relatively big cost for this place, was to like just buy cards, which I expect to go up in price because of meta movements and stuff, and sell them off, and then also just you win prizes at regionals, locals, bigger tournaments, judge bigger events for compensation. So there was also like that monetary aspect of keeping the hobby at least, like net zero, but usually a positive. So I continued playing, and as these games, as time went on, these games became more viable as a way of just earning money in both terms of pricing and flipping cards. But I guess the big shift happened with specifically the introduction of One Piece, where the prizes, conceptually, they're not that amazing in the sense there's no cash, but the One Piece IP is so strong, and the collectors are, there's a ton of collectors, and they are willing to just collect everything that's exclusive. So the prices for these prize cards in One Piece like quickly became insane. And I realized, okay, getting top 8 in one of these tournaments is like 4 to 5 monthly paychecks for Croatia, effectively. And there's even some tournaments with better prizes. So effectively, when One Piece came out, that was when I was able to like fully dedicate myself to playing TCGs full time, because with Flesh and Blood, I had like a series of good results and like some money made, but I don't think it was good enough to make a living off of it, unless primarily because there's not enough events, but primarily also because it's like it doesn't have an IP, so effectively you win cash and then maybe you can sell the prizes. But yeah, I guess that was like the line that I followed.
I think it's a dream for many players out there who really make a living off of this hobby that we all enjoy. But it's something else to really go that road and then also make it. So what really was that day when you realized like playing TCGs now is my life and I can do this for a longer period of my life?
Okay, that's a question I don't think I have an answer to, because I don't think it ever like there wasn't just like a snap where it happened. I was like, okay, didn't think this way the day before, think about it this way now. I think it was just a gradual change, and it kind of became its own thing before I could even notice it, which I can't complain about, because once again, part of it was just it's a hobby. It's about having fun, but then at some point that hobby grew into something more than just a hobby, something I can also make a living out of. I just yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like a very happy process that happened, which I wasn't like fully conscious of as it was happening.
So when you think about your life and imagine that you're not playing like TCGs full time, what would you do else? Is there a career path that you were following or another job that you're thinking about?
Well, the usual, like the generic route that I was taking before was studying computer science, but I did drop out of university for like a decent number of personal issues at the time, which I do regret in retrospect, but also like it was part of the journey. And if not that, which I always think I can come back to because it was always an area of interest for me, then perhaps like something creative. I always did consider things like perhaps writing or I don't know, maybe even just like flipping Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like vending for a living, because those are also viable paths to take.
Yeah. And for the prizes in One Piece specifically, I want to talk with you about like, as you already said, like these prize cards, especially those that are very limited, the ones that are given out at the World Championship, for example, they are sought after by these crazy big One Piece collectors. And like, what kind of range are we talking about in One Piece? Like, I know from World Championship in Flesh and Blood, for example, that they are giving out like the Pro Tour winner prize card. And that is also a huge prize card. But I think One Piece is even further, right?
So there's obviously a level to it. I think at the regional level, like callings, usually the prize cards, it's a combination of prize cards. It's not just like one gold foil. You get a serial card, which varies in price between 2,000 to 4,000 euros. The very first one, which I won two of, they were like 6,000 to 7,000 euros each, and have actually a very, very good serial number that I haven't sold yet, which might be even more. And then there's like a combination of other price cards, which usually scale like 2K, 1K, 500, or like 1.5K, 750, 300, something like that. And then for Euros and Worlds, I cannot tell you the exact range because I'm stupid and I haven't sold them yet. I'm thinking like, first of all, there's a lot of problems with like selling that stuff and covering taxes while also not getting like giga scammed. It's difficult items to sell, I feel. But the ones that have sold so far, usually for the European or like continental level of prizes, the ones that have sold, I believe, were like between 30 and 50,000 euros, which is like insane. Yeah. And for Worlds, well, that's just too difficult to estimate, but I would think somewhere in like 6+ figures range, like perhaps 150,000, 200,000. I'm not sure. I will try for as much as I can get, but first I need to actually decide to sell it. So yeah.
So for these prize cards, then especially those from One Piece, it's not only the monetary value for yourself, but also the value of the memory and the moment that you had winning that prize card, right?
It varies. Like at the end of the day, I do think there's like it's just cardboard, but also there is sentimental attachment to the accomplishment itself more than specifically this character on this specific card. The one I'm happiest with is from when I won the first regional by going fully undefeated. So that's the one that will probably be the hardest one to part with.
Yeah. So let's come to the other side of playing TCGs full time, and that's actually like the games that you focus on the most. And we want to talk about a little bit more about like the importance of One Piece for your career, but also these other TCGs that you're dabbling in. And as far as I have understood it, is that your major focus is One Piece, and then you also try out the other games. But it's is it possible to really go out and play One Piece as your main TCG, be good at it, and then also be like one of the best Flesh and Blood players or one of the best Lorcana players out there for yourself?
I think it's possible. It's just like everybody has a limit, and you kind of have to like not burn out, and just the fact that you're playing more than one game actually helps with that, because you can completely switch your mindset from like going to One Piece to Flesh and Blood to Lorcana. And I think especially because most games, One Piece is unique in the sense that it has like a lot of events, like a really huge number of events on a monthly basis. Like, just to give an example, by the time April ends, I will have played the 3 online tournaments in February, 2 offline tournaments that I'm going to in America because they're like on the same weekend, I'm still waiting for the participation lottery results to see if I play 2 tournaments in Japan as well, and then 4 offline tournaments in Europe. So that's between 9 and 11 tournaments in just the first 4 months of the year. Actually, in just 3 months, because February, March, April. But other games don't have that. Like Flesh and Blood, for example, to actually prepare at a high level for one of the Flesh and Blood events, I think you need more time invested than One Piece. Just learn all the matchups, all the strategies, actually decide on the sideboard. You need more time, but the events themselves are like lower in count. So you don't actually need to be up to speed all the time to compete. And that's even more true for games which are also less events, like Lorcana, but they're much simpler to grasp. They're much simpler to prepare for. Like takes you maybe a week of like really focused testing to be fully prepared for any Lorcana format, I feel. So I think finding a good balance and just picking up games as you play along. Like you never just do One Piece for a month and then do Flesh and Blood for a month. I focus on One Piece because it's the main game, but I still like follow the coverage of big events in other games. For example, the Calling Memphis that just happened, the Battle Hardened Bangkok, I think. I'm not sure where exactly it was. And then also the DLC for Lorcana in Melbourne. And there's also the Yugioh, I'm forgetting where the YCS was, Orlando or Dallas. Orlando or Dallas. So yeah, there's just keeping up with each game. And then when you actually need to prepare for an event, you kind of do focus testing to catch up with the meta.
So I'm very curious now that you are mentioning Yu-Gi-Oh again. I knew that from the conversation that we had in Prague that we have a friend together, and that's Jonas Koschel. And Yu-Gi-Oh, like what kind of part does Yu-Gi-Oh take up in your life nowadays? I mean, like for the pricing, I think you're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh, right?
I don't really play Yu-Gi-Oh pretty much at all. I'm not going to YCSs or anything. Like if there's a regional in Croatia and I have the time, I might go just to see the old faces, because as I said, there's a lot of good friends I made in Yu-Gi-Oh, and also like a lot of just people I enjoy being with. So I don't mind going to like a small local event here and there, but for big events, it just doesn't make any sense. If you do it, you pretty much have to expect that you're doing it as a tourist, because Yu-Gi-Oh pricing is awful. Yu-Gi-Oh as a game is not really. I find it much less enjoyable than other TCGs due to some very poor design choices on Konami's end. But yeah, I still like enjoy staying in touch with the game, especially because I have friends who still play. Some of them still play both Yu-Gi-Oh and One Piece. So yeah, I wouldn't say it takes up a big part of my life, but I do keep up with it, just I guess for the sake of it, to maybe if I ever feel like competing again or judging again, that I can just hop into it.
Yeah. So when we're looking at not One Piece, but the other games that you mentioned, like Flesh and Blood and Lorcana, are you aiming also to make somewhat of a living on those games? Or is it really, when you think about it, like One Piece is the one game that like not only keeps you alive, but keeps you living the life that you are living right now?
I think that's a good question. I think if I wanted to, like, if One Piece just disappeared tomorrow, the primary focus would probably be Lorcana and maybe Pokemon. I haven't tried Pokemon yet, but from what I see about the game, it's very approachable, very simple, and has a lot of events. So it'll kind of be the next best candidate. Lorcana doesn't have enough events, but whenever there's a big event, I plan to like fully in Europe. And whenever there's a big event in Europe, I plan to like fully prepare and attend those events and do my best at it. For Flesh and Blood, I'm not sure, because once again, there's not that many events, and the actual event system is sort of unforgiving, because it's like a competitive ladder from ProQuest, Pro Tour, Road to Nationals, Nationals, Worlds. So actually going up the steps is a bit difficult, because where I live, we have like really strong local competitors like Nikola Kramaric, Christian Chura, Luka Kramaric. Like it's not necessarily that easy to break through from a small but very competitive scene. So yeah, I guess my focuses would be Lorcana and Pokemon, if not for One Piece, and then maybe Magic somewhere in the distance.
yeah, we a little bit later on in the podcast we will also talk about like that group of people that you are surrounded of, your friends, your testing groups, and the people that you meet at the events, because I think those are playing a huge role in like, yeah, not only for yourself living like as a TCG player on a professional career, but also for players like myself that I myself only consider myself a casual player going out to locals, but for sure like the people are the center stage for those TCGs. And for now, though, I want to talk about like these TCGs, Lorcana, Flesh and Blood in particular. What do you like about those in comparison to One Piece, and what maybe you dislike about them?
Okay, so let's get to get Lorcana out of the way immediately. I don't like how the game is designed. I don't like how it plays, and I don't think it's a good game. But it has good prizes, and that's the only reason I play it. Like, I think if you deck build correctly and you make correct decisions, you will win decently consistently because the player base itself is not very like practiced. It has a lot of like Disney people, right? Like just casuals who are dropping in because they love characters and want to play a specific deck. But when comparing actually, One Piece and Flesh and Blood, Flesh and Blood has a lot of upsides, but it does have some downsides, which I'll get into later. But for upsides, once again, the way Flesh and Blood has been imagined since its like inception in 2018, it just appealed to me. It's like supposed to be a classic competitive TCG for people who are like competitively spirited, and I have been like basically since I was a kid, I always wanted to compete. Like even at stuff like finishing homework first when at school, like after class, even find stuff like that, but also like some sports like table tennis, chess. Obviously, like had to play chess at some point. And then it just grew into card games as well. So just the way that Flesh and Blood was designed by competitive players like James White and I don't remember who like Newson and all those names from New Zealand. It was just instantly appealing. And then the design itself actually worked in that manner, and where you did get a really good back and forth game that gave you a lot of chances, a lot of choices to make. And you could immediately after losing a game, you could like probably pinpoint, that's where stuff went wrong. That's where I should have played it differently. And game is like really well designed that way. And as I said, once again, Flesh and Blood has a really nice community. Especially coming from Yugioh, it was maybe even like I was not expecting it to be as nice as it was, so it even exceeded my expectations. So it might seem even nicer than it is. There's always some drama, but there is drama in every TCG. And yeah, just Flesh and Blood's approach to like collectibles and staples. I think honestly, I wish cards were cheaper, but since they're not planning to like make stuff cheaper, at least that's how it seems. I'm glad that they're also not like running the prices as Konami tends to do in Yu-Gi-Oh! And even Magic has done with reprints in recent times. But yeah, for the downsides, I guess the main one, the one that always bothers me the most, is there just not enough events. Like at least in Europe, like in NA, Flesh and Blood is thriving because there's always some battle hardened. But in Europe, not so much, and usually battle hardens are not really that worth traveling to anyways. And then there's always the big hurdle of very high barrier to entry in terms of cost, or maybe barrier to entry is the wrong way to phrase it. But the cost to compete is really high. You need those legendaries, those generic majestics, those even class majestics like reach some silly prices these days. And the decks, like relative to where I live, Croatia, southeastern Europe, they're really expensive, and people cannot generally just leisurely afford those. And then that means they buy one deck and they're like kind of siloed into this one choice. And if something goes wrong with the deck, because if LL's quick or a card gets banned and now the deck is bad, it turns people off of the game. So it's been the biggest challenge in building and maintaining a community in Flesh and Blood, because there was a period in Croatia where when I was like first starting to push it from like Crucible into Monarch into Aria, where we had like 20 plus players at weekly locals, and nowadays it's like between 5 and 10 usually, which is mainly due to the cost of the game. And just from a gameplay perspective, the part I dislike the most is probably the number of polarizing matchups, which I feel have reduced in recent times, but back when the two OG illusions were legal, like Prism and Dramai, those were like, you either beat them handily or you just lost to them. And I think that type of design, when prevalent in any meta, is just feels bad to play. Not so feel bad to play with, but to play against it's terrible. And I think it still exists in some forms in Flesh and Blood because, for example, I really love Katsu, but playing Katsu against a hero like Azalea, you are just you do not want to stay in that game because you just get ruined with like no chance to hit back. But yeah, I mean every TCG, One Piece as well, has its ups and downs. So for the most part, Flesh and Blood I think is doing a really good job, and LSS. There's a big thing. LSS as a company that manages the game, like their level of communication with the player base, and just staying in touch, giving reasonings for their ban list updates, or perhaps their product releases like reprints. It's top notch. Like it's the best I have encountered so far in TCGs. So yeah, LSS, the people behind it, they just get a big shout out, I guess, because they're who made the game as good as it is.
So you're mentioning so many different like facets of the hobby, and I think that really makes the experience of not only playing a game, but also being an active player and pursuing a career in it. That also, I think, what appeals so much for Flesh and Blood, because there are so many positive things. And like you said, the most important part about it is also the company behind the game. But I want to hear your opinion because, like, I have literally no clue, right? I only hear opinions about One Piece, and I'm curious about your opinion about One Piece in that regards, with like the cost to compete that you mentioned, also the company that is running the game, and then also those decks that you are encountering when playing the game. So the variety of decks and also the variety of the playstyles that you encounter.
Okay, so for One Piece, okay, let's start with the cost because I think that's the easiest one to cover. It's generally pretty cheap. It's not the cheapest out there. Like there's still Pokemon which are super cheap, but generally a meta deck in One Piece is like under 100 euros. Like the two best deck, like actually the first and third best deck right now are both under 100 euros, and then usually in the meta there's a deck which can get up to like 200, maybe close to 200. But yeah, the decks are relatively to other games like Magic and Flesh and Blood and Yugioh are really cheap. And they're just like full meta decks, like no card skip. Part of that is that because there is no sideboard, so you cannot really, have cards used to target specific decks, so everybody runs them. No, you just build your deck to be the best deck of its own, and then you play with it. But also, I think the rarity model in One Piece is like what enables it because they effectively have like marvels, but they are like a good drop rate per box, and then they have like a generous majestic equivalent drop. It's super rares like the old super rares in Flesh and Blood, but there's also not as many of them as there are majestics in Flesh and Blood sets. So it's actually not difficult to get the cards you need, and most of the price goes into the premium treatment Marvel versions of the cards, which sadly I think that doesn't work in Flesh and Blood as well, just because it's mainly player-driven market. Because as I said, One Piece has a ton of collectors, so they will buy up those expensive versions. And Flesh and Blood with no IP attached, it's a bit harder. Wait, where was I? What was the other facets I was supposed to cover?
Yeah. So at first it was like the cost to compete, but it's then also the variety of the decks that you are facing and the power level of those.
Yeah. So I think variety like varies from format to format. There have been 2 or 3 formats where I think one deck was very dominant. And most people are displeased by that. I'm usually very happy with it because all my best performances are in like nearly tier 0 formats because it's easier to like prepare the optimal strategy and execute it consistently throughout the tournament. Whereas currently we're in the middle of a very open format. There's like 8 or 9 viable decks. There's a clear 2 best decks, I feel, and then 2 or 3 who are like slightly behind them. But I think, especially in a game with no sideboard, which is played best of 1, it is more difficult to prepare and execute on strategies that you practice so much for than it is for in a game like Flesh and Blood, where you do have sideboard options. You can like adapt on the fly. In One Piece, that's not really an option. So if you do run into a bad matchup in One Piece, which sadly have been increasing, like the polarizing matchups in recent design have been increasing in number, you're kind of out of luck. You can always try your best, and you will probably outplay the significantly worse players than you. But as a whole, One Piece TCG is pretty competitive, like in terms of the strength of the playing field. So usually, if you run into those bad matchups, you might be out of luck, which is why the best decks tend to be those that are kind of like jack of all trades. No matter the matchup, they can put up a good fight, and at worst they're like 40-60 or 45-55. Which I think makes sense. Like you don't want a deck with high rolls. You want a deck that gets you through the 10 rounds of Swiss consistently and then gives you a good chance in the top card best of 3. And in terms of how the power of the game has progressed, I think there's like some noticeable power creep in the game, especially in the last 2 sets, because previously the game was a lot more about fundamentals. As you know, whenever TCG starts, there's not that many cards, so just playing optimally within like the constraints of the base rules, like good attacking, good defending, that's what wins your games. It's like in the old days of Flesh and Blood, optimizing your weapon attacks, not wasting cards to attack where not necessary, not overblocking when you don't have to. That type of stuff was really important in One Piece as well at the start. But as the game went on, there was more and more like synergy pieces where these cards combined work really well, and they kind of create these blowout scenarios where you can really start pushing advantage. So the game, you're both playing, but since there's like no reaction step, there's no instance, you're basically both trying to set up answers in advance and prepare answers to your opponent's answers and so on. And then now, in the recent 2 sets, like the form of power creep that is happening is the one I hate the most, where it's like one card just does the job of 2 or more cards, in the sense that like there's a tempo creep where one card will just push you a full turn or 2 ahead of the opponent unless they have one of their own. And then it's kind of it dilutes the games into, did you draw the really good card or not? And I really dislike that type of design. But as a whole, I think the power level is still decently manageable. There's still decks where just the basic fundamentals get to shine through, but there is this slight feeling of like having it slip away bit by bit. I'm not sure how that will progress. I hope for the best, but Bandai does have a history of power creep, so the fact that we're currently soon 10 sets in and the game is still doing like very well in terms of overall power, I think is a good sign. But you can never bet with Bandai, because as a company, I don't think they don't have nearly the community outreach that LSS does. They usually just make a decision, they publicize it, and they don't care about your feedback, or like they're not going to ask you for your feedback or necessarily provide you channels where you can reply to them. They will just push the decision out there, and whatever. Hey, if it works, it works. If it not, tough luck. But what I will say, the decisions they have made so far in both terms of balancing and reprints, they have been surprisingly good. Like they would make the decision, I will go through like the process, and like this makes sense. They only banned like 2 leaders which were like egregious, like just poorly designed. One of them was the one that I played at World Championship. It was just like something everybody played in that format. But usually they ban cards in a sense that in a similar way that LSS used to do, where they don't necessarily look at the power cards like the Majestics. Like recently the book burnings kind of suck, but they find like the most powerful commons or rares, which will kind of push the consistency and power of the deck down without like hurting the entire strategy. So like Seeds of Agony and Autumn Stars that we had in the past.
So it comes a time for sure that the question must be answered in the future, like if Bandai continues this way, or if in some kind of way they shift, because that's the one thing that I hear about One Piece as a game again and again, is that maybe One Piece can't hold the status that it has at the moment because of the decisions that the company will do in the future. But when actually talking to One Piece players like yourself, I usually get like positive feedback about that. And I think that's a good sign for someone like me, not really playing the game yet, but looking at it from the outside, because that means that like players like yourself are really confident in the game going forward. And I think that's really what matters when playing the game this year, and not really about like, oh yeah, Bandai has done that and that in the past, and that's just the way that it will be ever again.
Yeah, I think part of it is just that it's attached to a very big franchise that, some would say it's too big to fall. Like, everybody, One Piece is today what Dragon Ball was like 10, 15 years ago. Dragon Ball is still very popular and strong, but it's like nowhere near the levels of One Piece, especially sadly after Akira Toriyama died. But just Bandai has a reputation, which I think is justified. Like they did make a lot of mistakes in managing card games in the past, but you also have to keep in mind that it's not like same people in Bandai doing every TCG. They have different teams, I assume. And the designer behind One Piece, I did get to meet him. Like he does travel to, like the main designer, the lead designer. He travels to like occasional big events, even outside of Japan. He goes to American finals here and there, to European regionals or something. So I did get to talk to him a few times. Obviously, while I was in Japan for World Championship as well, I got to talk to him. And just like a very, very, I think, a reasonable person, good designer. He knows what to expect from the players, knows how he wants to design the game. I don't necessarily agree with everything, every decision made, but they are like sound decisions. And obviously, the team behind One Piece TCG so far has been a really how do I say it? They know their priorities. They know what players want. They deliver on it very consistently. And there will be mistakes, because I don't think there's such a thing as perfect game designer who can never make mistakes, but they also act appropriately to correct them. So yeah, overall, I would say One Piece it will definitely pass the 5-year test, like Flesh and Blood did, and then for a decade plus, we will see. Like you can never predict these things.
So going into this year, the year of 2025, I think the World Championship for One Piece isn't that far off, right?
Yeah, it's in March 15th, I think. March 15th, 16th.
Yeah. So how do you view the World Championship for this year going as a One Piece player?
I'm not going this year. I didn't qualify this year. This year I was in top 16 of the European Championship, sadly. I had like a really good deck and I would say a really high level of preparation. But at the end of the day, at this card games, I did lose a matchup, which I think was impossible to lose. But, when your deck just doesn't draw you the cards that you need, you can drop matches even when you shouldn't. So yeah, I didn't get to qualify, but also it's really, really, really difficult to qualify, because it's not like Flesh and Blood Worlds, where obviously it's still an accomplishment to go, but like it's like 400 players. In One Piece, I think this year is only 30 players, and you needed to be like top 2 or top 3 in a tournament of 2,000 plus players to qualify. So that's a decently big obstacle. I'm still happy with how I performed at the European Championship. But yeah, this year I'm not going, and I do view it as a bit of like the fact that I went last year and performed as well as I did. Some of it was like, despite all my preparation, some of it does just get down to luck, because, as I said, that format is the type I really enjoy. It was a tier 0 deck. I think I had like a really good read on the meta, a really good read on like all the play patterns, like for pretty much every deck in the meta. I was like completely immersed in that format and very comfortable with it. So if it was some other format, for both Euros and Worlds, I would probably not qualify. So there is some luck aspect in getting there, having the stars align for the format, something that works for you, but then also on the day of the tournament to actually perform, you also need a bit of luck, opponents not blow you out, and so on. So I will follow the World Championship as it goes on. I am rooting for, obviously, the European representatives, who, as far as I know, are really good players. Some of them I've known since pretty much since the game began. Yeah, I might even go to Japan just to play those extra tournaments, like regional level, if I get into the lottery system, because it did apply. So we'll see. Either way, it's like the pinnacle of the year for One Piece in any case.
So when you're talking about getting to the World Championship, I want to hear a little bit more in detail on your opinion, because the One Piece World Championship that you are describing reminds me of like the World Championship that we have in Yu-Gi-Oh! And also, like you said, the World Championship in Flesh and Blood is so much different from that. like what are the pros and cons on your side? What do you like the most, and what do you maybe dislike about the different World Championships that we have?
Well, yeah, the bad part about worlds like One Piece and Yu-Gi-Oh is that you have to get lucky on the day of the tournament to actually go. Whereas in Flesh and Blood or Pokemon, or I believe even Magic works like that. If you want to go and you grind and you play all year and you're consistent, you're almost like guaranteed to go. And I think in Flesh and Blood you can even just buy the PTI and go, right? And that gives you a chance
Can you still hear
to
me?
compete on that biggest stage. And I think just having the chance is like what makes a lot of people motivated, and it's why they want to practice and want to prove themselves. Whereas in One Piece, you kind of have to get lucky to get there in the first place, and all of your accomplishments throughout the year kind of don't matter. Like, I won a regional, I got a bunch of top 8s, doesn't matter. Like, I did not get into top 2 because I wasn't top 16, and that was it. But also there are some upsides, notably that you get some very exclusive treatment from Bandai. They fly you out there, they pay your stay, and you can just stay extra. And what has been honestly a very nice country to visit. Like, Japan experience was unforgettable for me, and I definitely want to visit it a few more times throughout my lifetime. And also, I got really exclusive prizes which were worth all the money. Sold a decent bit of them, so yeah, there are definitely upsides and downsides. But for a more social experience, I would prefer like more open world championship, like Flesh and Blood has, or Pokemon.
Let's view the World Championship in Flesh and Blood then a little bit more this year, because this is the first year that we have the World Tour going on, right? And that is something that we haven't seen before, at least in Flesh and Blood, and that motivates like players that are wanting to take Flesh and Blood more serious, and maybe even having playing TCGs as a career like yourself, jumping on the Flesh and Blood train. How do you view the World Tour then, and what do you think about it going in this year?
I think it's a part of a series of like really good decisions made by LSS to keep players invested in the game, like competitive players. I also like that they didn't just look at top level and basically make a list that is like, here's all the people who go to all our events, here's extra money to them. But they also made a really good effort to improve, like grassroots level of play by adding the gem pack thing, which at least locally got a lot of people excited. People are now consistently. They're showing interest to consistently show up at locals. Obviously, we only had one locals with the gem packs, but I think LSS is generally doing things in the right direction. There is a few things I think they could still iron out. I'm not sure if the prize pool for the top players goes from like the total yearly prize pool or if it's a separate thing. But just in general, I think Flesh and Blood is still adhering to one of its core principles, which is like a classic TCG designed with competitive mindset first, where skill trumps variance.
So for Flesh and Blood, in the last World Championship was a fatigue deck, right? That deck that was on life gain with Count Your Blessings. And I heard mixed opinions on those kind of decks. And I'm curious to hear your view on it, because I'm not sure about One Piece, but I'm definitely sure about Yu-Gi-Oh! That these very long stretched games and these decks that are kind of working their way out to fatiguing the opponent and also his deck take. Like, what do you view this kind of strategy? Do you like it? Do you dislike it?
Just remind me first, was it Enigma or was it No? With the Count Your Blessings?
It was Enigma.
Yeah, okay. So generally, I think like players have the right to play every strategy that is effective. And while I personally don't enjoy them, I am kind of glad they exist. I'm a bit of an aggro monkey. So, I just, regardless of the game, my first choice is something that just smashes face. Initially, it was Katsu, and then when Chain came out, it was Chain for quite a while. And then it was a little bit of Prism and then just 5/5/5. And then I kind of took a long break from the game. And now I'm coming back for some Road to Nationals, and I'll be playing Fi again. Maybe a little bit of Syndra. So when I see those decks, I kind of see a chance to win through like as optimal play as possible, because it's annoying that they keep gaining life, they're trying to fatigue you, but you're also given free reign. So I think there's a lot of room to showcase your ability to just maneuver through a very basic obstacle course. It's just that the barrier that you have to cross is decently high. But I think, obviously, I haven't played in the Counter Blessings meta. I haven't played against any of those decks or any aggro decks of the era. But I feel like usually when fatigue is really, really good and the players are really, really good, there's still the chance for the aggro player to win, or like not necessarily aggro, but value-oriented deck. So I'm not sure if like my initial feeling is like Zen should have won those worlds. He still had some bonds, like the red ones, I think only. And I think the deck was still really strong then. Actually, a local Nikola Kramaric won the calling in Osaka. But yeah, I don't mind those decks existing. I don't mind them existing in Yu-Gi-Oh as well. I think in Yu-Gi-Oh they are hated because the game itself has some basic design issues where it's kind of, you sometimes just don't get to play the game. And it's not always going to be because of floodgates. Floodgates are just like an element of what doesn't let you play the game. Floodgates are for Flesh and Blood. Always it's like cards which restrict your opponent's actions in some way. So it would be like the on-hit effect on Spinal Crush or Red in the Ledger, or just Channel Lake Fridge, where your opponent just gets inability to play the game as they want, basically. But yeah, in One Piece there's a few decks like that which try to stall out. But usually One Piece, it's naturally well like balanced towards offensive over defense. Like there's control elements, but even the best control decks still have like a lot of offense, which is like it becomes available through like Swarm, just building a board while controlling the opponents. And then these types of really slow decks, they do not get to really win out against control decks in the meta. They can usually beat aggro, but control not so much. So yeah, personally, I don't mind those decks. Playing against them, I enjoy them as a challenge, but I'm not going to hold it against the player who's playing them or anything still like that. And unless they're really egregious, I don't think the cards need banning either.
Yeah. All right, then let's come to that price aspect again. I think that's something that also Flesh and Blood tackles in a way that like the other TCGs don't really do. And we saw, especially with the Hunted, a reprint for Command and Conquer. And you already dabbled in that price point of competing in the TCGs. But what do you specifically think about like cards like Command and Conquer that now see a legendary reprint, and potential other cards like Enlightened Strike or Warmonger's Diplomacy that are just needed if you want to compete?
I think they're too expensive. Like, as much as I would hate losing money, I think if every card in Flesh and Blood, like if the supply or just the rarity model changed in such a way that, made Tunic a 20 or 30 euro card, make CNCs like 10 euros, I would be happy. There would be more people playing the game. There would be like more interest for the game, and it would just be easier to find like good games where both players have access to all the optimal cards. You're not beating someone because you spent more money. That's basically it. Like, well, when set like Hunted comes out, and I look at wait, let me see if I have one. Yeah, when I look at this stupid card, which is like, how much is it? 70 euros. And you need a playset of those, like 210 euros on set release, just, to keep up with the meta. To me, that's like ridiculous. And I think that's what's keeping the game down in smaller regions, especially. Basically, US has the game going pretty smoothly because US is, on average, it has the richest average citizen, or like, I guess not the richest, but they're definitely up there in terms of spending power. I'm sure there's outliers like Switzerland or whatever, but the ability to actually buy the cards is a big obstacle in TCGs, and that's something that I think Flesh and Blood handles very poorly. But at least since they're fully committed to it, I'm glad that they're not half-assing it. They're not like reprinting Command and Conquer into a 10 euro card, but then keeping all the other stuff like Tunic 150. I don't know, Warmonger is how much, 30? Codex of Reality 80. At least, they reprinted it, but they reprinted it as a legendary with an exclusive art, so it's like still the same type of price. So, at least it keeps the collectors happy if they're already not going to cater to potential new players.
Yeah, I think it's what you're bringing up is that making the collectors stay, but then what you also mentioned is that compared to other games like One Piece, even Yu-Gi-Oh, like Flesh and Blood has such a small collector base compared to these other
Yep.
TCGs that I think sometimes it's funny to see like how much effort they put into making those collectors happy, and then like keeping all those other players that otherwise would join out. And I'm really curious in the future if we ever see that change. But I also see like that a lot of players are willing to pay the price because either they are in a situation where they just have the money because they already have an established job, they have like everything running in their life, and they don't really mind if they pay like 1,500 or 2,000 euros for their deck. But yeah, I think that's something that I'm always very curious to hear players like yourself talking about, because oftentimes those players like yourself that are competing on a high level wish these cards would become more affordable and that other players then could also join in the game. And I think especially in your example, you're talking about like, yeah, the player base even shrinking and not that many players coming in. And I think that would change if the prices would change as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like it also goes into the equation of when you're picking which TCG you want to play, or for me, which TCG do I want to focus on for a specific period of time. Well, how much money do I need to shell out to build a deck and go to a tournament? For One Piece, I'm playing it main, so I never take price into consideration. I bling out my decks and whatnot. But then I look at, okay, Lorcana is having a big event. How much is a deck? Usually between 200 and 400 euros. That's like easy, buy it, play the event, then can sell it later, or maybe wait for more events. But for Flesh and Blood, I saw like a friend told me who recently got into the game. They bought into Ira or Ira. I'm not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. And they told me they spent like 2,000 euros or dollars. Point is like such an absurd amount of money to spend on a deck, and then to top things off, Zephyr Needle gets banned before the deck can be even played in a high level tournament. To me, that's just like a major feels bad, a potential turnoff, and that's not even taking into account that when you buy into a deck, and then suddenly it's Living Legend, and effectively its exclusive card pool is just banned, and you have to wait for a new release. And LSS has been really slow with those, I think. So yeah, it's just creates a feels bad element where I wish there wasn't one, but also by what LSS has communicated in the past, I don't think this will change, because they do like to appeal to collectors because it's their preference, like it's their game, and they also alluded to like similarities to Power 9 way back when they were announcing the game. So yeah, I guess that's how it will stay. But I hope it changes for the cheaper, because cheaper game is played by more players and is therefore better, because that's just how it works.
Yeah. All right, let's come to the point where I want to really know, like, what are the people that you are playing the games with? Your testing partners? Do you have an official team that you are on? What are the people that you are playing the games with? I mean, we heard some names of.
Yeah. Okay. So
already
first and
during the
foremost,
pod.
I'm not on a team, but Christian Chura is a good friend of mine, and we have basically partnered in this endeavor. We both focus on One Piece primarily, but play other TCGs, and we do. We have a Patreon together where it's currently only One Piece, and it's likely to stay only One Piece. It's called Cloud Chasers, after the server, which one of the Flesh and Blood's prominent, how do I say it, internet dwellers made. Shoutouts to Frank. And yeah, we have a Patreon going, so that's also another. I forgot to mention that earlier, but that's also like a steady source of income, which enables like taking TCGs professionally as a thing. But yeah, we've just been really good friends. We have met through Flesh and Blood back in Monarch, I think, and we both just had the desire to compete at a high level. So it just kind of naturally grew from there. He actually got me into One Piece because I guess I can go back to that story at some point. But yeah, we just test a lot for pretty much every game that we are both interested in. So obviously he has been, I guess, the number one friend in the group for testing. And then there's also a few other people, notably Luca Foren, who I have known in Yu-Gi-Oh since like 2017, 2016. I don't even remember exactly. Who's basically every game he plays, he's insane with it. Like he was Challenger and League of Legends even had like a short, what's it called? Like professional team stunt in like the Italian league and I think the Balkan League. But he's also like really good in Hearthstone, like Yu-Gi-Oh, multiple tops, now in One Piece. He even was supposed to try Flesh and Blood at one point, but calling Utrecht got cancelled because of COVID outbreak. And he's the one that I test also a lot of One Piece with, but also pretty much every other TCG where we both look at it and think, okay, we can play this. So for example, when I picked up Lorcana, we saw there was like DLC Birmingham coming up, which is like, once again, calling equivalent, like 2,000-ish players. And we were like just committed to testing Lorcana for a week and a half, and then went to play that. And I ended up having a really good result for my first tournament. I got top 16, which was a very nice payout. Like Lorcana prizes are also quite insane. But yeah, I guess it's mainly those two I test with. And then for Flesh and Blood also, we have, for both Flesh and Blood and One Piece, we have like more strong locals who I will test with when I have the chance, because they're good players. But what testing Flesh and Blood extensively has not been my focus lately. If I had to do it, it would probably be with like, once again, Christian and the Kramaric brothers, who are once again locals, really good players. And yeah, I think that's most of it. Like there's obviously people I know through Discords and just online groups, but I mainly keep testing to a local level, which is also part of why I'm not in a team, because usually teams, I think, they have to provide really good benefits to be worth it. And I think those teams which shell out money for their players for, like flights, hotels, whatnot, or even just providing the cards free of charge, I think those are mainly an American thing. Like I don't know of any of those in Europe.
So when thinking about this testing group and those players that you are surrounded of, I know that there are also players that don't have those surroundings that you're talking about. And like I see also like these lone players, or those players that are mostly testing on their own, can also achieve greatness in these TCGs. But how do you view like players not having a test group? Do they like succeed often in the different TCGs that you were in, or do they mostly like struggled along the way?
I think they definitely like start off with a handicap, because having a testing group, a bunch of people who will just help you explore the beginnings of an idea that you have and optimize it, very valuable. Having a group of people who tell you no, what you're doing is like you're just wasting time testing this, or like we already tested and so on. It didn't end up good. It's really beneficial because it can save you time. Two heads are better than one, and then that applies to testing groups as well. But for somebody who doesn't have access to any of those, I think there's still a lot of ways to start learning, to improve gradually, and then slowly, make a name for yourself, or maybe just have enough of an online presence, even without any accomplishments, to make some connections, to start meeting good players, and then maybe form your own groups. Like you don't need to join, the best of the best. You don't need to be in the group with Pablo Pintor or Michael Fang to get good and competitive in the game. You just need like people who are like-minded in their desire to reach the highest levels of competitive play. And if I had to like give advice to people who are in those situations, well, first thing is usually that you want to approach learning with an open mindset. You have to admit that you're probably making mistakes, but you don't know what the mistakes are, and that's always the hardest part. You don't know where you're going wrong, but you probably are going wrong somewhere if you're not like performing, and you need to figure that out. And for that, there are several options. The easiest one, the most natural one, and the one that makes games like Flesh and Blood so nice, is that you can just ask people. There's always that social aspect. If you know a good local player, just ask them, what could I have done better? Maybe why do you do these lines when you play this specific hero? And just talk to people, socialize, and ask for advice. And the odds are they will usually help you, especially if you're a local. But you can also get such advice online. There is some problem there that everybody has a voice online, so you don't actually know if somebody knows what they're talking about, or if they're just rehashing stuff they heard from a mediocre player somewhere else. But also the element that is most often overlooked is you just need to practice, especially in the games like Flesh and Blood. and One Piece, repetition, like getting those games in is really important. So you know the magic, you know how to play out of different situations. And if you get stuck, well, even when there's like no people making content specifically for the hero you're interested in or for the playstyle you're interested in, you can always just go look at coverage, look at how the best players play the hero, think about why they made these specific decisions. Flesh and Blood coverage is really good, for instance. They often have hand cams, so you can see what the players are holding in their hand. And you can just go through the process, how would I play this? And then look at how they played it and think, like, why did they do it like that? Maybe even try to discuss it online. I'm sure people love to argue about these things online. Like, you know, some people have one idea of what's correct, and others have other points. People love to argue, so you can always get information out that way. But besides reviewing other people's play and learning from them, you can also just start recording your own matches and going over them, thinking like, because when you finish a game and you have that moment of, okay, I messed up there, I should have done something different, that kind of harmfully focuses you on one specific point where you probably did make a mistake and you realized it. That's good. But until you review the game and see how the game actually played out from start to finish, only then can you actually notice, you know, okay, there was this small mistake here, this bigger one here, this small one here, and then this pivotal one that I noticed earlier here, and then here was another small mistake. And there's a lot of steps to gradually improve, and then part of that also carries over to deck building. Deck building, I think, is like a very challenging part on your own because you need knowledge of the card pool. You need this level of creativity that not everybody has. Personally, my deck building, I wouldn't say I'm creative. I just like, I think of a card that's not common, but I cannot like visualize how it will perform. So I just have to like bang my head against the wall with that card in my deck for like 5 to 10 games and then see, okay, is this working or not? And then kind of, there's a word for that approach. It's like, I can't remember the word, but it's like, it either works, either doesn't. And then if you go through enough of those cards, maybe you find something that actually works. But the more people you know, the easier that process gets because they can help you test, or they can tell you, okay, I already tested this. It did not work because X and Y. So don't bother with it. Try to figure out something else. Yeah, I think there's probably a ton of other stuff to cover in the topic of self-improvement. I had some experience with it because when I got into Flesh and Blood, there was literally nobody in Croatia who played it. Or like there were 3 or 4 people who knew about it, and then it was just like a process of building up a local community. But I also wanted to compete, so I played like in all the webcam tournaments during COVID because places around the world were holding skirmishes. Singapore, Sweden, like I still remember like Agora Hobby, I think, was the Singapore armory that I played like pretty much every week, and some American ones. I think the Canadian Tarantula something. Yeah, it was good times, but as I said, part of improving is just playing the game a lot because back then it wasn't as easy. You had to like download TTS and find people to play with. Nowadays you can just load up Talishar. Sadly, it does not have a rank mode, so you cannot guarantee good quality of opponents, but you can just jam games, get those repetitions in, and gradually improve. So yeah, if there was any specific word you should take out of this long rant, it's practice, 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 and then ask others for help.
Yeah. So then when you're talking about playing the game a lot, you sure have encountered a lot of players during those last years. And I'm really, curious to hear, like, what are the few players that come to your mind immediately when you think about the strongest opponents or the players that surprised you on the way?
Okay, so for Flesh and Blood, I think it's definitely, and this is like the coldest take anyone can ever make, but I was amazed by Michael Fang in every aspect. He's like the kindest human being I've met in TCGs. How I met him was me and Christian were at Calling Prague. Not Prague, sorry, Krakow in 2022, I think. It was that calling that was in the Blitz Viserai format. So everybody was playing Viserai. And Christian was playing side events, and he got into finals against Michael Fang, and they just started talking, socializing, and Michael asked him about the Pro Tour, like, is he going to go to the first Pro Tour in New Jersey? And Christian was like, I don't know, like, I qualified, but, it's expensive, America, and so on. And Michael was like, oh, wait, well, you can just fly over and stay at my place and play the Pro Tour. And that's how we met Michael. And Christian went to the Pro Tour. He got 20th, I think, overall with Shane, for which I helped him test a lot. And it was like a really good experience throughout. And there's just one of, I'm sure, like dozens, maybe hundreds examples of Michael's really nice contributions to the Flesh and Blood community. And to top it all off, as we all know, he's like one of the best players in the world. He has a Pro Tour win of his own. Like definitely a great human being, an amazing player. Like definitely one of my favorite people I've met in TCGs overall. And then for other games, I think the one that immediately comes to mind is also from America. It is Jonas Abraham from, I want to say Arizona, but I'm not sure. He's a One Piece player, and he's just a really nice person. Very, very deep and like good understanding of the game, but also the ability to express it. Like not everybody can, understand things very well, but also verbalize them to other people. And he's just like amazing, and he's one of the best players in the world, maybe even the best one. Sadly, he didn't qualify for Worlds this year, but he was at Worlds the previous one. Also, when he got 6th, I believe. And yeah, he's just an amazing player, really kind as a person as well. And when I think of people who, luck is always an element in TCGs, right? You can get unlucky, you can get lucky. But then when there's people who get lucky and they always just like basically win the event, like Jonas is the first person that comes to mind when I think of people like that. If he gets lucky, he wins the event. There's just how it is. I've never seen a feature match of him where he was not playing like pretty much perfect. Like maybe you could nitpick a choice or two, but just insane player. And let me think. I guess Herman Hansson is a Yu-Gi-Oh player who I've met before. He was basically a semi-known name that he is today. Actually, I think he's pretty well known because of like some memes in the community, like because of his association with Farfa. But basically, early days of my Yu-Gi-Oh of playing, I hung around on Reddit and Discord a lot, and then there was this one guy who I really hit it off with, and we just tested, talked about decks together, and he ended up being like one of the best players in the world. He went to a World Championship in 2019 or 2018 for the physical Yu-Gi-Oh card game, and then recently to the Master Duel World Championship. He's just a great player, insanely creative. Once again, very kind person, and a great friend. So easily, makes the list as well. I'm trying to think of people here, but it's like so difficult. But yeah, okay, let's just stop at those three. All three people I view very highly for these respective TCGs.
Yeah.
And for Lorcana, I think you mentioned you already did interview with Dinkan Khan, but also what a beast! Like that guy is that guy is just too good.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Shout out to him. Sure, he has like I think it's his best placement yet, right?
Yeah.
He won
he straight up won
whole
the
thing.
DLC Melbourne and qualified to Worlds.
Yeah.
And he was fully undefeated.
So we'll see.
So,
yeah, that's crazy. I'm really happy for him, and also I think that just shows that as a TCG player, even though when one game that you're playing may change for you, you can find love in other sides of the hobby as well, and then also find new people to play with. But I think it's something that you mentioned throughout the podcast again and again, is that some people you will just meet again, because those people are also traveling through different TCGs, trying out different things. And especially when you're competing on a high level, I think it's so amazing to see that like players come up again and again, because I remember doing the pod with Jonas as well. And even though he doesn't really play Yu-Gi-Oh that much anymore, he finds joy in other TCGs as well. And also, even though maybe not competing at the YCS or the Pro Tour level, he finds joy in that as well. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, Jonas Korshel is also like one of my favorite people in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like I met him, I believe, through Herman, because at some point we were in like this mostly friend group server, but also like testing server, but mainly just friendly shenanigans. And then Herman played against Jonas in at some YCS in like quarterfinals or something, and I had a good match, and then he befriended Jonas, added Jonas, and then I've known Jonas since. Also just a fantastic human being. I'm not sure if he plays TCGs that much these days, but yeah, also just one of the nicest people I've met in TCGs.
I want to end with this statement here, talking about the beautiful people that you can meet in TCGs. But I want to give you the space if you want to shout out anyone here at the end.
Well, obviously, once again, Christian. He's in the second half or the first half, depending on how you want to interpret it, of the Cloud Chasers. We focus on One Piece TCG because that's what we do these days. But obviously, great friend. Happy to work with him. I guess shout out to Okafor as well for helping me test in pretty much every game that I want to pick up, and then also to our local Flesh and Blood community who keep things going, who keep things interesting, because TCGs are not just, I do them professionally, but they're not just a job. They're still like something I very much enjoy, and having those transitions from really high stakes competitive tournaments where maybe you don't play up to your expectations, maybe you are disappointed with the result, but then you get back to your locals and everybody's so chill and friendly and just such a relaxing atmosphere. I value that very much. So Nico, Luka Kramaric, Dario, Valentino, Filip, Sven, I could go off all the people I very much appreciate, and also people who are the same in my on the Yugioh side, like Renato, Ivan. Yeah, I think that is it. Let's not make even this into a really long rant.
Yeah, I want to really thank you at this point for taking all the time coming on the podcast here at the Fabled Academy, and I hope to see you at the next tournament.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and maybe next time you can interview Christian as well.
Yeah, that would be amazing.